Jan Porter has to swear in Don Borman and Dana Wrigley for the re-election. Congratulations, gentlemen.
Okay. Raise your right hand and repeat along. I
Donald Borman, do swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States so long as I shall continue a citizen thereof, so help me God. I, Dana Wrigley, do swear that I will faithfully discharge all the duties incumbent upon me as a member of the Town Council according to the Constitution and laws of the state, so help me God.
thank you.
Good to go, ma'am?
Good to go.
The next item on the agenda is to consider approving the minutes for the meeting held on December 12th.
I make a motion, we accept the minutes of December 12th. I'll second
Moving second, all in favor? Next item on the agenda is to act upon a blanket letter of approval of games of chance at the American Legion.
This item is an annual one that comes before the council, and you're asked to approve and acknowledge that games of chance take place at the Legion Hall, and that you're on record as giving your approval for that activity to occur.
I make a motion, we accept this letter of approval for games of chance. Second.
Second, all in favor? Thank you. Next one, we'd like to discuss visiting the municipal department facilities.
This item is on your agenda because Dawn and I had a conversation. The council has, in the past, made visits to businesses in town, and I think we've all found that useful from time to time, and I think members of the community appreciate those visits. Dawn's suggestion was it might be equally useful if we made visits to the various municipal facilities and see exactly some of the operational issues that occur. I guess we've been to the transfer station, and everyone thought that that was useful to help understand the recycling program. And so we wondered if the council would like to devote some time to that as a group, as you did tonight in your visit to the wood boiler, to continue that series by us dropping in. I talked with Jeff Hall. We thought this time of year with snowstorms predicted for tomorrow and I guess a few days from now, that the Public Works Garage might be the first one on your stop. And Jeff has suggested a time if you'd like to do it, but before we get into the details, maybe you'd like to determine whether or not the council wishes to spend some extra time, because it does require investment that, you know, we all have limited amounts of time to give to this kind of thing. But that was the conversation we had. Don, do you want to say?
Yeah, additionally, we had asked the department heads to come in with a fairly flat budget, but we also told them if there are things that were needed, either currently that they really should have in addition to what they've had, or if there's some long-range things, that they should bring those forward. And this might give us a chance to hear some of their long-range plans. One of our goals is to, look at our planning process. Additionally, it's always good for the people who work in the town to have us around so they can feel that what they're doing is verified and confirmed by us, and I just think it would be great for us to meet with them periodically.
Thank you for the suggestion. I think it's a good idea.
I think we should.
Yeah. Do you have any suggested or recommended dates that you're looking at?
Yeah, I do have a recommended date, and we realize your schedules vary. The Public Works Department, of course, if we get into a situation like tomorrow, we have to reschedule so that we don't interrupt snow plowing operations this time of year. But Jeff made a suggestion that will probably be good for some and not for others. But he hope that you might be able to come to the garage on January 3rd, which is next Thursday, at 10 a.m. And it is hard to select a time that's a good time for everybody, and we can try to vary these so that there isn't any member of the council who's permanently excluded from the visits because of the way they're timed. But that worked for Jeff, and we hope it would work for at least the majority of the council.
Works for me right now.
Works for me.
It's a good time for me.
It is a good time.
I knew there'd be an issue, but,
No problem.
would
I've
you
been down
like
there
to-
enough so I know what's going on.
okay? And I'm sure that Jeff and I would be happy to go around another time and do with Byron what the others will see. So that
That'd be
when it
good.
comes to a budget talk, you'll have the same information that the other council members have. And
That'd be good.
I'm sure that Jeff would be agreeable to that, as I am
Probably afternoon would be
in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
sometime between two, what's that quit time?
They,
On a normal
well,
day.
3:30 usually if things are going smoothly.
Yeah.
We'll
Usually.
we'll work on that.
Yeah, okay,
Okay,
sounds
but
good.
is there a motion then to do
Oh.
that for the minutes? or-
I'll move that we meet each of the departments and start with the public works.
Seconded.
Move second, all in favor? Here we go.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll tell Jeff.
The next one is to make, to act on a piece of tax acquired property on High Street.
We have some good news on that one, because the council gave some direction at the last meeting that we would extend an offer to the owner of the property. And it did that following the meeting, the next day. Or I think actually the buyer was in the room and knew he was kind of waiting, but he took some time to consider the offer. And he came back with a counteroffer that was less than we had proposed. And I said, well, it's unfortunate because I had a figure in mind that I was authorized to sell it at, and his offer fell short. But I told him what that number would have been, and had he come back with that number, I could have sold it to him. And he then adjusted what he had told me to the figure that you proposed. So the offer that we made and that we signed was to sell the 86 High Street property for $25,000. The only stipulation is that the prior owner issue a release of claim. They had indicated to us previously that they would do that. Wasn't Mr. Muggero's attorney does not see that as a difficulty, and we should be able to obtain that shortly. Not looked upon as going to be a significant glitch. So I think we've done what you asked us to do at the last meeting, and we're pleased to be able to take that off from our list of active items once we complete the sale.
I'd like to make a motion that we take that money and put it with the other money we put away for future property purchases when we do get it.
I'll second that.
Move second, all in favor of that? Opposed?
I would just like to see the money be used to reduce taxes.
I think I got that noted, thank you.
Off to the manager's report.
Okay, I put in your packets a report from the library for the months of October and November. And Carol has included in there the circulation figures for both months. She's reported there on some of the activities. She mentioned the candidates forum that seemed to be a successful event held last fall and in October. She's mentioned in the report some visits that were conducted by members of various classes throughout the system, and members of the Library Advisory Board, and some cultural events that have taken place over there. So it's a fairly full report on activities in that department since the last one you received earlier this fall. The next item is a follow-up to something that was discussed at the last council meeting. There was a question raised about whether the intersection out here, leading from the traffic signal up KMD, could be better protected from cars that are merging together as they head up KMD. And I had been at a meeting in this room that Mike helped set up back in the fall. A citizen had asked to meet with us and DOT and Senator Cates to see if that problem could be addressed. And one of the outcomes of that meeting was to put those posts in place. But back then, I think it was September, we had learned that the DOT was going to try to get that done this fall as sort of a trial. They can't leave them there during the winter because they hinder snow plowing operations. But I got back with Jamie Andrews, the contact at Maine DOT, and he said that the arrangements had been made and that those delineator posts will be installed in May, so that hopefully the painted line that's a little thicker now than it was is helping, but people have said there's still an issue with people who come out of Fairfield Street and then immediately slide over to the right, and it kind of creates a traffic hazard there. But we feel that once we get these delineator posts, you've probably seen them, they're the upright ones about 3 feet tall, and they put them a certain distance apart or a ways down the roadway to maintain the separation of the lanes. We will be seeing that in the spring, and the Maine DOT is taking that onto the project. Next item on, if there's no questions about that, the next item I wanted to offer you is the proposed budget calendar for the season that will begin soon. Doug and I have arranged to have the budget materials distributed to the department heads to begin working on January 3rd, next week. We have arranged here for the usual series of 5 meetings for the council and the budget advisory committee to meet, and I have proposed a review schedule here that breaks up the material into hopefully chunks that can be dealt with at each of these various meetings. And there's some extra time at the end of the process for a discussion meeting, because generally after the presentations there are items that the council and the budget committee members want to discuss on, drill down into, get more answers, have the budget heads come back for specific discussion. So there's a slot for that discussion to occur, followed by another meeting if needed for voting as we move up to the annual town meeting. And I came across something that I wanted to mention. There had been discussion last year about what night or what day the annual town meeting should occur. And the discussion was, how do you get the most people there, and is there a night or a day that would bring better participation? But I happened to note as I was reviewing things that the town charter sets this date, that it will be the first Tuesday in May. So we know the charter can be changed, but this date, May 7th, 2013, is what the charter says we'll do until someone changes the charter, just to bring that up for informational purposes. I hope this is satisfactory. There are quite a few, as we set this schedule, there are quite a few dates we have to avoid for various reasons, and there are many people with many nights that work better or worse than others, and we've tried to recognize in putting this together as many of those as we can. There are holidays, there are vacation weeks when people are away, school vacation weeks when people are not available, and so we've done the best we could with this. And again, I'm sure that there's probably going to be dates here that don't work for certain members of the council or the budget committee, but this was trying to be reflective of the things we did know at this time. Is that okay on that item, Mr. Chairman? I wanted to bring you up to date on the natural gas project. Since the last meeting, we had an item on the agenda that was, when the Summit Utilities people were here, they had asked if the council would be interested in signing a letter of intent. There were some questions that came out of our discussion with them that night that we had, and a direction was given at the last meeting to make contact with Maine Natural Gas, the competitor to Summit Utility, to determine whether they had any plans that would involve the town of Oakland. And we learned of that from reading in the newspaper about a presentation that they had given to the Winslow officials. So I made a phone call and had a visit last week from Roy Lane, representative of Maine Natural Gas. And he came and spoke with me very knowledgeably about their plans. They have a different business strategy altogether from Summit. But he told me that they do not have plans for Oakland at least for 2 years. So it wasn't as though they had something immediately. Their business plan is to try to make the contacts with the larger consumers and then work out from there, much like we had originally discussed. And that's a different plan, as you know, from what Summit was telling us when they were here and when it was all about. So I don't think we've missed any opportunities, but he did tell me, Mr. Lane did tell me that right now there's kind of a lull as these companies compete for the larger accounts. What they have to say to us is, at this time, we're not in an active phase of their conversation. I got back with Mike Dugay, who was the man who was here, one of the people who was here from Summit the night they came, and he feels that pending, if that company wins the contract with some of the major consumers, that a service line to those could go through Oakland this year. That the service line to the major consumers would come down KMD and make a right here at the light and head up Fairfield Street to some of the major consumers up the line. So if that holds true, we may see some activity in the new year. But he said that even if that happens, services to the neighborhood through which this line passes would probably not be ready before a year, 2014. So that ends up with kind of a similar timetable to what, well, both companies were kind of telling me about the same time frame. Don had a question.
Go ahead, Don.
So if I understand, Maine Natural Gas will not be coming through Oakland at all unless they have a spur off of one of their lines on the other side of the river Waterville. Summit still plans to come down KMD and go up Fairfield Street for their major distribution.
I think that's an accurate statement, Don.
So for us, the more likely situation with Summit would probably be more readily accessible. Plus, we would still have to consider whether we granted a TIF or whether we didn't through their line should they come through here.
Summit did indicate that they would be seeking TIF, tax increment financing arrangements, which they told us they would use to help make connections to customers. The other company indicated they're not seeking any TIFs, so there was a major difference in approach there. Finance director had suggested perhaps the TIF monies might be used to help make the municipal buildings suitable for gas and save conversion costs that we would need to make, at cost to the taxpayer. And he found out for us through conversation with state authorities that the state won't allow that. They won't allow TIF monies to benefit a public entity. To them, it's kind of like the public giving money to itself rather than spurring additional commerce. So that's just a question that we had and an answer that we received.
So on their initial line, they will not have any spurs for use other than their main consumers? For example, if it comes down KMD, come right by our properties here, they're asking us for a letter of intent saying we would buy natural gas from them, which we have some issues with, but that, would that be available off that first line, or is that an additional spur that all they're using Oakland for now is to put the main line in to go up to their larger?
I'd have to say some of this would be determined. I mean, the first part, business park, it seems like would be likely user of gas on the first pass, but he did make the comment to me that neighborhood service for residences and so forth would likely follow a year behind the construction of the main line.
Now, is that main natural gas or is that Summit?
I was just speaking Summit that time.
Oh,
They're the ones who want to come up KMD and out Fairfield Street, Summit. Maine Natural Gas apparently envisions reaching us from different directions as they expand into the area north of here and east of here. Is that good on that?
They had asked us for a letter, the letter of intent. Dana had commented that, you know, at this point, we probably weren't ready to give it. We basically tabled what we were going to say to them until we got more information. And I don't know if, I guess my inkling now is to say, yes, we support them, but with no idea when they're going to be even supplying us. That makes it a further tug to get us to say we're gonna buy from them, regardless of what the future may hold. So I think we should
I
write-
asked that twice in our conversation, and it didn't seem to be a priority at this time.
So they're not really looking for that letter at this time.
I think when they need something, they'll come back and tell us what they need, and you'll have a chance to consider it then. I asked for a draft, and I think at one point they mentioned they'd provide a draft, but
Correct.
I think that's still in the future. I also wanted to mention a couple of councilors have asked, and about the process of finding a new first part director. I am a member of the Personnel Committee, and at this point in time, the Personnel Committee is trying to schedule interviews with people that have to travel some distance to be here. So I don't have a date at this time. I know the President of the Committee is working to make the arrangements, but they're not, I don't have a date yet to know when that would be. We thought it might, he asked me what dates I had available to try and help make a time for one of the other members. And I offered him a date this week and some dates next week, but I have not received notice yet of when that interview may occur. Others have been interviewed, but we're trying to complete that process. And that's an update on that matter. Eric?
I was gonna ask you, has there been any talk about combining the Central Maine Growth Council and Forest Park still, or
There has been talk.
is that just talk?
Well, there have been meetings, I haven't been at the meetings, but I've talked with ones who have interest in that area.
So following up on that, as they've interviewed candidates, have they brought up that possibility, or are they still, are
Yes.
they advertising right now just for a first park director?
Yes. Okay? Okay. Eric's recreation report is in the packet for the month of November, and he has given you a summary of his activities for senior citizens in the community. He did a Veterans Day appreciation annual event to honor Bill Pomeroy and Ron Weber this year. It was a nice ceremony, and I know that I enjoyed it, and I think we had some students there from the school to come and see the event, and everybody there had a great time. Vanessa Lonsky Youth Basketball Association is underway, and teams are organized, and Eric is assigning players to various teams and trying to get all the arrangements made before the first ball bounces. And he did a good job, as he always does, putting the program together. He's reported also on the community tree lighting that took place December 7th. Some of us were all there and thought it was a wonderful event, and the tree looked wonderful for Christmas this year, and we're thankful to the donations that were made to help make that possible, both money and time, to put new lights up this year. Really was, got a lot of compliments. And Eric has also mentioned some of the travel team tryouts, how he closed out the tennis season, getting the nets taken down, and cleaning up the ball field out at Pleasant Point. So a good summary of the Recreation Department's efforts, and he's indicated that he's available sometimes to come and talk with you if you need to see him before budget time. And I wanted to recognize Bradley Bickford, who is filming this meeting for us tonight. Experiment. We'll be successful if Bradley can make it successful. If anyone can do it, he can. And we're grateful to him and the school for providing this equipment and being here tonight, giving the time to give better access to the community for how our meetings are conducted and the matters that we take up.
Thank you, Brad.
And the last item that I have tonight came up late. I think you've got a letter in your packet from Police Chief Tracy, and we have a surprise that not exactly what we were looking for, but in the process of converting to the new narrow band radio standards that public safety people are required to do by January, we had made provision for the radios that we needed, the reprogramming of radios that needed that, and we did not anticipate the need for a new repeater. This was a device that's on top of the tower up on High Street, and it's a necessary part of the communications setup in order for our police officers to talk to one another as they're making responses. This is a $6,000 problem. We have had input from 2 vendors on how best to obtain the device that we need so that the police can function effectively. And the higher quote was for $6,216. The less expensive quote from Yankee Communications is for $5,892, $300 less. The chief doesn't see any way to avoid this expense. We feel that we will have to take it from the budget that we currently have. There's no request here for any additional funds. The chief feels that he will have to put the binders on various expenditures that we have some discretion on between now and June, the final half of the budget year, and the training budget will need to be utilized to help provide for this. But under the circumstances, the letter of explanation will have to suffice because we don't have too many options, but we wanted you to be aware that we've struck this obstacle, and this is how we propose to deal with it. So we're wishing that we'd anticipated this better, but we didn't, and we will take responsibility for that, and hope that you're satisfied that if we can bring this out of the existing budget, that we've done as well as we could with this unexpected expense.
You want a motion that we agree to purchase this?
It would be great to have that in the minutes if you were so inclined.
I'd make a motion that we authorize Peter and the police department to purchase this repeater so that we can be compliant with the radio rules.
I'll second that. All in favor?
I thank you, and I should have said and didn't say that the chief offered to come at an additional meeting if you wanted him here to explain this himself. I asked him for the letter, I thought it was a good letter, and I didn't think it was necessary for him to come, but he did offer, and I was remiss in not mentioning that. Thank you for the vote, for the lead. That's all I had tonight, Mr. Chairman.
I'd just like to ask Peter one question. That would be, Peter, are you gonna use a low bid or is it?
There are really two firms in this area, and our choice would be the lower bid. In this instance, either one will give us an excellent piece of equipment, but because it's an unexpected expense, we'd rather take the lower one for sure.
Don?
Just a question on our web-based meeting tonight. I'm just wondering if there, have we been able to do anything to communicate with the public that this is happening? Newspapers, will they give us any print?
Well, the way I understood the direction we had last time was that we were gonna get this posted to the website and see what it looked like. And then if we're proud of what we've achieved, then we'd like to, actually, the newspaper has been pretty good. There have been at least 2 articles, there's one in today's paper about our attempt to do this. So we've had a couple of articles already. If it comes out good and we're happy with it, then I'd like to make mention of it in any way we can.
Is the intent to save up several meetings to keep them all on our web so people can access back meetings or?
That would be the intent. Now, I'm going to assume that we're happy with the production of tonight's meeting. And if you're happy with the production of tonight's meeting, then we can talk about how we will obtain a camera of our own. I don't propose to rely on borrowed equipment beyond tonight, but if this quality of equipment does the job, either we'll try to find the money in this budget or we'll budget something in the next budget cycle, if you prefer. And we can either begin doing this, I'll try to get some more instruction on how to make this happen at a time that you feel is appropriate.
Bradley only goes to school during the day, you can do this evening, right?
Well,
You don't have homework, do you, bet?
Oh, no, never, no.
We could have a thank you in here every meeting for them.
Yes. Mr. Wrigley?
I just wanted to ask Peter about the speed bumps on Greeley Street.
we took them up for snow plowing season.
Okay,
We'll put them back in the spring.
in the spring.
Yes, sir. That way they won't be damaged.
Is there any news from our fireworks commission? Committee?
Couple members here, I don't have any more to report.
We're gonna schedule some meetings after the first of the year and we'll get going on some proposed ordinances that we'll have to vote on someday.
I know you all read in the paper last week how glowing the, how glowing the state fire marshal had about the incidences, the safety. It really wasn't a supportive of, not to be supportive, but it was saying how great things were going. Which isn't necessarily true, but that's the article's intent.
And the way they talked in that article is a little bit different than the same people talked at the MMA discussion in Augusta, I thought.
Exactly, yeah.
No. And I think it was the same person, wasn't it?
I would assume so.
Wasn't that Augusta's fire safety guy?
Do you have anything, Mr. Wrigley?
I'm all set.
We've been joined tonight by a civics class from SLC High School. Before we close out the meeting, do you have any questions for any one of us? Or any one of us would be happy to answer your questions. You guys aren't this quiet in school, and you weren't that quiet the other day when I was up talking to you. Nothing? Did you learn anything tonight? Brad says, yeah, I learned. I don't want to be here every night.
This is
I wasn't
actually,
asking you, Brad.
this is killing 2 birds with 1 stone for me. I'm doing this and I'm actually doing the civics class thing, so I'm...
Kelly, did you have anything? Did I miss something? Okay. Kelly?
Just a question if the meetings to the public departments were open to budget advisory committee members as well.
If there are no further questions, Mr. Wrigley?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
All in favor? Good night, thank you for coming. If you have any questions, we're here. Seriously, please.
Kelly, did you get the time? Did you write that
I did. I have to do it.
Do you want me to